Ronald Reagan used to contend, half jokingly, that the scariest words in the English language were, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Tonight in our third story, a new permutation, even more terrifying for the founding Republican Party. "Hi, I'm President Bush and I'm here to help." Mr. Bush spent about 20 minutes at the Republican National Committee headquarters in Washington today, thanking a couple of hundred staffers for their help in making his presidency possible and for their work in trying to make a McCain presidency possible. All of this, of course, behind closed doors, because Mr. Bush would not want to remind voters the people trying to give us 4 more years of John McCain are the same folks who gave us the last 8 years. And given how the down ticket races for House and Senate are going, we have to wonder whether Republicans other than McCain, other candidates and their staff, are also worried about the Bush effect. But because we have no cameras, we must harken back to our alternative means of covering such events. President Bush visits Republican National Headquarters, Puppet Theater. Hi. So which three-dimensional Republicans are running scared? Their ranks include even red state Republican standard bearers, obviously the convicted felon now, Ted Stevens of Alaska, trouble, but also North Carolina Senator Liddy Dole, trouble, going into her own pocket to fund a struggling campaign. Georgia's Saxby Chambliss, trouble, fighting off karma after his vile win in 2002. Even Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, trouble, in danger of losing in Kentucky. And Norm Coleman, trouble, running as a moderate in Minnesota, but still running slightly behind somebody who used to be an actual comedian. To look a little more closely down ticket, let's bring in Chris Cilizza, who, of course, writes the fix for WashingtonPost.com. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Keith. You know, interesting fact, I was an excellent finger puppeteer as a child.
Well, we might have some additional per diem work for you if you just talk to your agent about
Sure.
that. Let's put some of the races in context here. Liddy Dole in North Carolina, the Republican leader in the Senate, in trouble in Kentucky. How is this happening, and does this mainline back to President Bush, or is it McCain, or what is it?
It's a lot of things. I think in Kentucky, it's primarily the economy. I think Democrats had hoped that they could get Mitch McConnell. You know, he's the leader of the party. I think he counts as about 3 in the minds of Democrats to beat him. But they hadn't gotten a lot of traction until this economic crisis. Right now, you're looking at a very close race. There are other ones where I think circumstances have intruded. To be honest, in North Carolina, Bush has not helped. I think McCain, or the competitiveness of Barack Obama in the state, has not helped. But Liddy Dole, according to newspaper reports in the state, spent 33 days in the state in 2005 and 2006. That's the big problem. It's not Bush, it's not McCain, it's not Obama. It's 33 days in the state for a sitting U.S. senator.
We just joked about that Bush effect, but Republicans are indeed running away from the president. How does an incumbent in any Senate office, in any House office, who at any point slapped George Bush's back, now pretend that he had nothing to do with him?
Well, it's hard. And Keith, remember, especially in the Senate, it runs in 6-year cycles. So these people who are up right now were up in 2002, a very different political environment when everyone was scrambling to have George Bush at their campaign events. George Bush said, you know, would tour around the country to try and get these people elected. You mentioned Norm Coleman earlier. Perfect example. Norm Coleman was recruited into the race by Dick Cheney and Karl Rove. They pushed Tim Pawlenty out of the race, the governor of Minnesota, to get Norm Coleman in. So it's hard for him 6 years later to make the case. I'm an independent. George Bush and I disagree on many things. He's trying. But again, people have long memories in politics, and they remember 6 years ago he was saying the exact opposite.
Mitt Romney is new to the ranks of the Republicans, arguing that Obama is already iced this, so the Republicans ought to concentrate on this message. The voters should make sure there are lots of Republicans in Congress to stop him. Is there any consideration of the possibility that the voters might want to have a unified government? They might want a Congress to help the guy they're voting for president carry out his agenda?
You know, Keith, throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, that divided government argument worked. People tended to like to have that balance of power, the checks and balances. But in Washington Post ABC, we did a poll in mid-October. 50% said they would like the White House and Congress to be controlled by the same party. 30% said they'd like it to be divided government. So I think we're seeing this overarching change, this desire to change the way things are done in Washington. And that transcends parties in some ways, and I think is really making that divided government argument a little more convoluted.
The leadership issue, back to McConnell for a second. if he loses, or if the Republicans take big hits and in both the House and the Senate, or they don't, and just McConnell loses, what happens in a power vacuum? What does the Republican Party of 2010, never mind 2012, what does it look like in 2010?
Yeah, I think there will likely be, if McCain loses, if they do lose seats in the House and the Senate, regardless of whether McConnell loses, I think there will be a reckoning. I think you're going to see younger faces emerge. I'll give you a name from Louisiana, Bobby Jindal, Indian American. He's 37 years old. He's the governor of Louisiana, ran on a reform platform. My guess would be there would be a return to the roots of the Republican Party in the states, and you would see someone like Bobby Jindal rise, but there's going to clearly be a power vacuum if the scenario I just laid out happens, and there's going to be a lot of Republicans scrambling to fill it.
Chris Cilizza, author of The Fix on WashingtonPost.com and a veteran of the finger puppet wars. Many thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Keith.
You will remember that.